Welcome back to Ask Dr. Clarke. Today's topic is a very important one. All of my topics are important, but this is particularly important. How to break the narc trauma bond. Every woman I talk to in my phone advice sessions is trauma bonded to her narc. And as long as you stay trauma bonded to your narc, you can't leave him. And your life is a living hell. One of the main themes of my online video series, From Codependent to Independent, is breaking the trauma bond with your narc. That's one of the main themes. And I'll show you exactly how to do that in that video series. In today's video, I'll explain the trauma bond and get you started on the process of breaking it. I'll talk a bit more about the online video series From Codependent to Independent at the end of this video. The narc's relentless attacks keep you distracted, exhausted, consumed by him, weak, barely surviving, and tied to him in a trauma bond. Trauma that's experienced over and over and over again doesn't just wound you deeply, it does. It ties you traumatically to the person who is traumatizing you. So you are unable to focus on yourself and build yourself up. You are unable to prepare to leave him, which is exactly what I want you to do. I do not want you to stay with the narc. I have never said to any woman I've talked to, or man, after hearing the story and they're living with a narc, don't care the circumstances, don't care how long, don't care about you, how weak you are and the situation, how dangerous the guy might be, you're getting away from him. I don't help anybody stay. It's not my role. Now, it will take time to leave. Take time to break the trauma bond. But you can do it. Not overnight. The narc's abuse is awful and destructive just by itself. What makes it worse, what makes it more deeply wounding, is that you are still emotionally connected to him. Every abusive event re-traumatizes you because you still are connected to him emotionally. I have lady after lady in phone advice sessions say, Dave, I know he's abusing me. I know that I need to leave him, but I feel unable to do so. And they still will say, I love him. I'm connected to him. You know what? No. Actually, yes, they are, but that's not a good reason to stay. And we can break that trauma bond. Because the abuse is nonstop and unpredictable, you don't have time and energy to recover before he wounds you again. This keeps you paralyzed and stuck in codependency. Your emotional connection to the narc feeds the ongoing and growing trauma bond. Now, the narc re-traumatizes you so you can't think straight, you can't get healthy and strong, you can't even begin the process of leaving him. And that's exactly what he wants. And I'm telling you this, he knows exactly what he's doing, and he's enjoying the process. To control someone like that, to have that kind of power, they love it. Normal people don't want that. Now, when you married the narc, not knowing he was a narc, of course, you gave your heart to him. You gave your love to him. You gave your whole life to him. This makes you vulnerable to his abusive attacks. He didn't give anything to you. You gave it all to him. He acted like he was giving you everything. He was not. Narcs aren't attached to anybody but themselves. Now what you have to do is take your heart, your love, and your life back from him. You must create emotional distance. You have to build a wall around your heart. You have to emotionally detach from the narc. Break that trauma bond. Emotional detachment is the key. Emotional detachment protects you from the narc's attacks, which will continue. Now, the blows will still come, but their impact will lessen greatly when you're emotionally detached. Emotional detachment helps you take assertive action against his attacks. You will have the focus and energy to follow my assertive anti-codependent strategies that you'll find in that video series, From Codependent to Independent. Finally, emotional detachment allows you to deal with the narc's backlash to your growing assertiveness. And let me tell you what, as you get more and more confident and more assertive, and I'm going to teach you how to do that, whoa, the backlash will be intense, but you'll be able to manage it. He will be outraged. He'll come after you with a vengeance because he wants you back in passive codependent mode. Well, you ain't going back there. And as you respond to the backlash and all the horrible attacks because you're becoming more assertive, that's going to strengthen you too. And it actually prepares you to leave and deal with what's going to happen after you leave him. Biblical support for emotional detachment. It's all through the Bible because God, of course, understands it along with everything else. Here's just a few. We have all the verses in Proverbs about staying away from fools. Here are just two. Proverbs 14:7 says, "Stay away from a foolish man, for you will not find knowledge on his lips." Boy, you're not kidding. Proverbs 23:9, "Do not speak to a fool." Don't even speak to a fool, for he will scorn the wisdom of your words. Don't bother talking to the narc about anything. We see Abigail in 1 Samuel 25. Her heart was shut off from her narc, Nabal. She emotionally detached from him with God's blessing, and that's why she was able to take all those assertive actions, revolutionary actions, for her time and place against Nabal, her miserable narc husband. And Paul's clear instruction in 2 Timothy 3:1-5 to detach from a narc. After Paul describes a narc in detail, he gives this blunt instruction at the very end of that passage. Have nothing to do with them, Paul says. Now, since you're not ready to leave him physically, let's start with emotional detachment. How to emotionally detach from the narc. Just a few ideas, and there'll be more, of course, much more, in the video series From Codependent to Independent. 1, stop all efforts to change the narc in the marriage. Most good wives try everything under the sun to change the narc in the marriage, all fruitless. Stop marriage counseling. Stop talking to your pastor or any counselor as a couple. Stop going to marriage seminars. Don't go to marriage intensives. Stop recommending therapists for the narc. I have lady after lady asking me, who can I send my narc to see? I say, nobody. You don't care about him. I don't care if he sees the man on the moon. Sigmund Freud coming back from the dead. Nobody cares. This is about you now. Don't look for a therapist for him. That's ridiculous. He's a grown man. He can find his own if he wants to, which he doesn't. And stop reading traditional marriage books. They're not for you. As good as they can be for a normal couple, Dr. Gary Chapman's The 5 Love Languages, awesome book for a normal couple, 2 normal people. Emerson Eggerich's book, Love and Respect, great for a normal couple. No, not for anyone who's married to a narc. Waste of time, actually counterproductive. They will keep you tied traumatically to the narc. The narc's never going to change. Never going to change. Drum that into your head. Please understand that. Never. Number 2, stop saying I love you to the narc. It's not true, and it weakens you, and it feeds the emotional connection. When those words come out of your mouth, it is just tying you to him. Now, if the narc happens to say I love you, just to kind of keep you tied to him, you can mumble I love you back. As long as you don't mean it, that's fine. Number 3, stop referring to your narc in any positive, endearing, or personal way. Stop it. Do not use these words or anything close to them when you're talking to him or talking to someone else about him. Sweetheart, sweetie, honey, hubby, quit that. He's none of those things. He's a dirtball. I had a lady in a phone advice session, and we're talking, sweet lady, older lady, and been married for 40 plus years to this miserable narc, and she was telling me this awful story about how terrible he was over the years. She kept referring to him as my hubby. I said, excuse me, ma'am, stop saying hubby or I'm going to hang up on you. And I was serious. I said, he's not your hubby. He's a monster who's destroying you. She got the message. Do not use the narc's first name again. That's too personal. Don't use the narc's last name. You're going to be getting rid of that nasty last name anyway. I don't care if your maiden name is Finkelmeyer. You're going back to your maiden name when you dump him. Call the narc you, he, him, they. I'm not in favor of these crazy pronouns, except in this case. You can pronoun him to death. That's all he's going to get. And avoid as much as you can referring to him as your husband. He's a narc and that's all he is. Now, you don't call him a narc to his face, but in your mind, that's all he is, an abusive dirtball narc you temporarily live with. He's a roommate, a sleazy scumball roommate. Okay. For my complete and detailed step-by-step plan to break your trauma bond, get that video series From Codependent to Independent. It's the same price as if you were going to do one phone advice session with me, and it is worth, I think, a lot more than $220. We're trying to be reasonable. But it's going to make a difference in your life. And also, I think you'll find along the way as you're escaping, as you're working to get away from the narc and break the trauma bond, my devotional, I Will Be Free, these are the voices. And I thank all of you who contributed and scores of you did. Your stories are in this book. And it's your words that give it the power what God has done, how he strengthened you, how he got you out.